The Beatles and All You Need Is Love on BBC Radio Berkshire, coming up to 20 to 12. So with temperatures set to rise yet again today, tomorrow, over the weekend here in Berkshire, we're almost guaranteed to see Heathrow towards the top of the charts when it comes to at least one of the hottest places in the UK. So why is Heathrow Airport so hot? Is it due to all of the thousands of aircraft engines firing there throughout the day? Or is it about being closer to London? Let's find out now with Dr. Paul Williams, who's a professor of atmospheric science at the University of Reading, who's been looking into this. I mean, first of all, we should just say that there is a weather station at Heathrow, first and foremost, Paul, and that's quite an important distinction to make, isn't it?
Good morning, Sarah. Yes, it is. We have a certain number of official measuring stations because, of course, not just any old thermometer will do for taking an official temperature measurement. It has to be in what we call a Stevenson screen, which is a white painted box, and it's got to be a certain distance above the ground. And that basically puts the thermometer in the shade and makes sure that the temperature reading being taken is an accurate reflection of the air temperature and not just because it's being warmed by the sun.
So that's quite interesting in itself, because the term weather station implies something quite vast and very regal looking. I wasn't expecting it to be a white box, Paul.
It's a small white box. It's a bit disappointing, to be honest. It can be a bit of a letdown if you're expecting a massive box of whizzy electronics. It's a simple, well, there are different variants on it, of course, but in its simplest form, it's a thermometer behind a white box. Now, at Heathrow, in the meteorological enclosure, they've got more than just a Stevenson screen. They have a barrage of different meteorological measuring equipment, looking at snow, lightning, atmospheric electricity, cloud cover, and all of these other parameters, as well as just the temperature.
What governs where these weather stations are placed?
Well, they tend to be at airports, for one, because aviation relies crucially on the temperature. But as you rightly say, we only have a certain number of these stations around the UK. So the fact that it tends to be Heathrow, I mean, the hottest ever July in the UK was at Heathrow 3 years ago. That was 36.7 degrees Celsius. It might well have been 36.8 degrees Celsius a few miles outside of Heathrow, but we didn't happen to have a thermometer in the right place at the right time to capture it.
So why is Heathrow so hot then? I mean, first of all, let's talk about the potential reasons why. And the most obvious one, I suppose, first and foremost, is the idea that you've got all of this aviation traffic buzzing around it. Does that make any difference whatsoever to the temperature, the air temperature at Heathrow?
That's the million-dollar question, and I don't think any scientific studies have been done on this, but I can certainly give you an educated guess, which is that the planes themselves don't really, I mean, of course they give out some heat, but that's a very minor contribution compared to all of the other reasons why Heathrow is often the record-breaking spot. I mean, some of the factors are the fact that it's in the southern half of the UK, which of course receives more sunlight. We're closer to the equator. Very unlikely for a UK temperature record to be broken in Aberdeen, for example.
Yeah.
The other factor is that the elevation of Heathrow Airport is quite low. If you've ever climbed a mountain, you'll know that the higher up you go, the colder it gets. The temperature drops off by up to 1 degree Celsius for every 100 metres you ascend, and Heathrow is quite low. It's only 25 metres above sea level. A third factor is the fact that the airport is quite far inland. So the ocean, it takes a lot more heat from the sun to warm up the ocean than it does to warm up the land. So the ocean can have a cooling effect. And so in the middle of the day when the sun is shining, these inland areas tend to warm faster than the coastal areas. And Heathrow is about as far inland as you can get, basically, in all of the directions.
And of course, we've got other elements like the fact that there is a lot of black tarmac there, a lot of black asphalt on the runways. You've got the airport buildings as well. And the buildings can hold on to heat, can't they?
They can, and that's a very well-studied phenomenon. It's called the urban heat island effect in the meteorological community. And exactly as you say, the tarmac, the concrete, the man-made structures, they're a lot better at absorbing energy from the sun during the day than, for example, a farmer's field in rural Berkshire. They're also a lot better at hugging onto that heat overnight, so they tend to stay warmer overnight and start the next day being a bit warmer than a farmer's field. So that's a very important effect as well.
Yeah, I had no idea, by the way, that soil and the makeup of the earth had an effect on its ability to insulate. I suppose if you thought about this in a great deal of detail, you might come to this conclusion. But the soil can be a factor because, for example, in places like Surrey, where there is lots of heathland and lots of sandy soils there, sand is apparently a natural insulator, and so that will store the heat of the sunshine, and things like that have a role to play.
Absolutely, a crucial role. I mean, you'd think it would just be about how high the sun was in the sky and whether there were clouds hanging around. But no, the things that are going on at ground level, especially the amount of moisture in the soil. Has it rained a lot recently? How much water is there in the soil available to evaporate? Just plays a really critical role in determining the heat, the temperature on an average day, but also the record-breaking days as well.
Really interesting. Paul, thank you. That's Dr. Paul Williams, Professor of Atmospheric Science at the University of Reading, on why Heathrow is so hot. In a moment, we'll talk about the implications for our fruit and veg from the heatwave.
Saturday mornings from 11. Yeah!